와. 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 아니에요, 저야말로요. 아니요. 아니야, 차비야, 진정해. 너 지금 좀 과해. 와. 아니야, 과해. 이전이 더 스탠리 패러블. 아, 나 잠깐만, 방제 스탠리. 헉. 몽밍밍님 바라바밤빠밤 고맙습니다. 여름휴가 갈 때 맛있는 거 제가 부모님하고 오빠 맛있는 거 사줄게요. 아유, 안녕히 주무세요. 오늘 감사했습니다. 안녕히 주무세요. 네! 요거 그냥 그대로 갈게요. 방송화면이 제가 보는 것보다 어둡게 보여가지고. 현재 시각. 이거 또 장난질 하려고 이거. 안녕히 주무세요. 네. 이거 움직인다, 내 거. 하면 똑같은 거다.
This is the story of a man named Stanley.
이거 오랜만이니까 한번 볼게요.
Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy. And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say
뭐야,
hi.
똑같잖아.
Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
오케이, 출발해봅시다.
All of his co-workers
전에랑 완전
what could
똑같은데요?
it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had
다른 게
simply missed the
없어.
memo.
다른 게 없어. 이런 거 다 봐야 돼. 이런 거 다 이스터에그라고. 이 게임 아주 망할 게임이고. 저런 거 그래프도 하나하나 다 잘 봐야 돼요. 저거 삼전 주가일 수도 있어요. 주가 그래프. 다 봐야 돼. 이거 다
When Stanley
이스터에그가
came to a
있다니까.
set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
오른쪽
This was not the
문.
correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee
저런 거
lounge
진짜
first,
확대하고 봐야
just to
되는데.
admire it.
삼겹대.
Ah, yes, truly a room worth admiring. It had really been worth the detour after all, just to spend a few moments here in this immaculate,
이거 기둥
beautifully
불편해. 이거 왜
constructed
있는
room.
거야?
Stanley simply stood here, drinking it all in.
싫은데.
But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left.
거짓말하지 마세요. 지금 거짓말하고 있다면 당장
Stanley
멈추세요.
was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't 5 years ago.
나 이거 기억나.
Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. But in his eagerness to prove that he is in control of the story and no one gets to tell him what to do, Stanley leapt from the platform and plunged to his death. Good job, Stanley. Everyone thinks you are very powerful. All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean?
몰라요.
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
미팅룸. 싼데싼 미팅룸.
When Stanley came to a set of
오른쪽
2 open doors, this was not the correct
문.
way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well.
But
Perhaps
the
he wanted to stop by the
room.
employee lounge first, just to admire it.
Admired.
Wow, yes, this
감탄하다.
room. But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left.
안 갈 건데.
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
점프. 출발하면 내리면
Oh,
어떻게
well,
돼?
look who's got cold feet. Sorry to break it to you, Stanley, but that lift isn't coming back. You'd best either get comfortable right here on this platform or test your luck by jumping to the floor below.
저 아까
You know
뛰어봤는데요.
what? Looking at it now, it's not that far to the bottom floor. I bet you can make it.
저 방으로 들어가 볼까? 진짜
Come
아마요?
on. I'm sure you'll survive the jump. Don't tell me you're scared. That's not the
뭐야?
Stanley I know.
막혔잖아.
Do it, do it, do it, do it, do
안
it, do
가면
it, do
어떻게
it.
되지? 이거 점프 없나? 뛰어내리기 5,000달러? 가만히 있으면 또 뭐라 하려나? 여기 카드 있어요. 잠깐만, 님들 이거 봐라? 내가 마우스 윙클릭 누르면 키보드 타자 소리 나. 사실 이곳은 가상 세계가 아닐까?
Whoops. Looks like I was wrong. How clumsy of me.
키보드를 누르면서 꿈을 꾼 거지. 게임이거나.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the
아니,
meeting room.
투수바보.
Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
투수바보.
When Stanley came to a
아니야,
set
오늘은
of 2
내가
open
바보일게.
doors, this was not the correct
맞아,
way to the
난
meeting room,
바보야.
and Stanley knew it perfectly well.
호호호, 자비
Perhaps he wanted to stop
바보라.
by the employee lounge first.
맞아,
just
오늘은
to
내가
admire it.
바보할게.
The
난
lounge was
바보야.
sublime, a work of art. But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left.
파란.
Stanley was so bad at
이번엔
following
가만히
directions, it's
있어보자.
incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
아이씨.
Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here.
얼굴
I'm
빨개.
not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. Someone you've forgotten about. Please, stop trying to make every decision by yourself. Now, I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for her.
자,
This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself. To put your work aside. To let her back into your life.
그녀를
She's
되찾으세요.
been waiting.
그녀를 뵙겠어. 깜짝이야. 이거
That's
깜짝이야.
her, Stanley. You need to be the... Oh, no, 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 no.
뭐야?
You can't... Did you just unplug the phone? Well, that wasn't supposed to be a choice. How did you do that? You actually chose incorrectly.
아니, 나
I didn't
돌려서
even know
눌러.
that was possible. Let me double check. No, it's definitely here, clear as day. Stanley picks up
그녀를
the phone. He's
뵙겠습니다.
taken to his apartment where he finds his wife, and the two pledge themselves to one another. Music comes in, fade to white, roll credits. Not picking up the phone is
아니, 나
actually
놀래서
somehow an
눌러.
incorrect course of action. How is that even possible? None of these decisions were supposed to mean
조졌다.
anything. I don't understand. How on earth are you making meaningful choices? What did you... Wait a second. Did I just see... No, that's not possible. I
아저씨
can't believe
말을
it.
해요
How have I
말을.
not noticed it sooner?
혼자만
You're
알지
not
마시고요.
You're a real person.
감사합니다.
I can't believe I was so mistaken. This is why you've been able to
괜찮아요,
make correct
아저씨.
and incorrect
사람은 누구나
choices. And
실수를
to think
해요.
I've been letting you run around in this game for so long. If you'd made any more wrong choices, you might have negated it entirely. It's as though you completely
알았어요.
ignored even the most basic safety protocol for real-world decision-making. Or did you not
혼났나요?
grasp the severity of the situation? Well, I won't have that kind of risk on my watch. I'm going to stop the game for a moment so we can educate you properly on safe decision-making in the real world. Please observe this helpful instructional video.
Choice. It's the best part of being a real person. But if used incorrectly, can also be the most dangerous. For example, in this scenario, a hypothetical real person named Rupert has a choice. He could invent a machine that eliminates food shortages across the world to make life better for all people. Or he could spend years of hard work forgetting how to read. Which choice would you make? Remember that unlike here, the real world makes sense, and at no time should you make a choice that does not conform to rational logic. If you find yourself speaking with a person who does not make sense, in all likelihood, that person is not real. Allow the person to finish their thought, then provide an excuse why you cannot continue talking. Turn to a partner and practice saying, "My goodness, is it 4:30? I'm supposed to be having a back, sack, and crack." Excellent. Making choices on a
맞아?
regular basis is the best part to a healthy
아호가
decision-making
나오는데요?
process. Most medical professionals recommend making at least 8 choices per day. Do you make more than 8? Less? And finally, if you begin to wonder if your choices are actually meaningful and whether you'll ever make a significant contribution to the world, just remember that in the vast infiniteness of space, your thoughts and problems are materially insignificant, and the feeling should subside. At this time, your instructor will guide you in an exercise to test and reinforce the material covered in this video.
Ah, welcome back.
와, 아까랑
You may have
달라졌어. 이거
noticed
뭐야?
that this room has
왜
begun to
자동차가
deteriorate
생겼죠?
as a result of narrative contradiction.
멈춰, 멈춰,
But not
멈춰.
to worry.
그치, 그치,
Now that you're properly informed on good decision-making, we're going to revisit a choice you made just a
뭔가
few minutes
구치같이
ago
생겼어.
and see what the
구독 취소?
correct thing to do would have been. This way, please.
와. 다시 돌아가요? 왜요?
Now that we know your choices are meaningful, we can't have you jumping off the
아까 떨어져
platform and
죽었더니
dying.
떨어져 죽을까봐
Imagine the main
막아놨나 봐요.
character dying senselessly
안 돼요.
halfway through the story. That story would make no sense at all. We just need to get you home as soon as possible before the narrative contradiction gets any worse. Unfortunately, it seems this place is not well equipped to deal with reality.
아. 아니에요. 점프 없는 게임이라니. 네. 그래서 어디로 가라고요? 맞아요?
Almost there. You'll take the door on the left, back to the correct ending. The story will have resolution
왼쪽
once
문?
again, and you'll be home free in the real world. Now remember, all you need to do is behave exactly as Stanley would. That means choosing responsibly
아,
and always
선택을
putting the story
잘하라고?
first. I'm quite sure you'll be
왜요?
up to the task. Just follow my lead and
왜요?
you'll be fine. All right.
왜요?
When Stanley came to
님,
a
저
set of two
MBTI
open
T 이해가
doors,
필요함.
he
공감
entered the
못함.
door on his left.
왜요? 왜요?
No! Why did you do that?
그러니까 나도
Quickly,
왜 내가
hurry
먼저
back in the other
물어봤잖아요.
direction. Perhaps we're
왜요?
not too late.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6B, 4, 5, 6B, 4, 5, 6B, 7, 8, 9, 7, 8, 9, 7, 8, 9 4, 4, 5 뭐 없나? 와, 오류 났어. 나처럼 계속 눌러보는 사람이 있지 않을까? 나레이션님 어디 갔어요?
It's ruined.
왜 가래네 왼쪽으로?
My story. You've
화요일
destroyed my
죽이기,
work.
수요일
Why?
부수기.
For what? What did you get out of
장난기.
that? What did you think was
미팅
so special
관련해서는
about seeing the game
432번을
undone?
말하지
Left here
마세요.
like so much garbage. It's
451번의 개인
It's
시간.
worthless now. And what am I supposed to do? Even if there were a way to continue, would it be worth it? To know that my story is now incorrect? How can I go back to that? I can't erase that knowledge. I'll have to live with it forever, reliving its
그놈
impossibility forever.
해고해. 해고할
I couldn't
사람
live that way.
구하기.
Is it better to shut the game
우와.
down entirely? To willingly destroy all of my work? I don't know. What's the answer? What do I do? What do I do? What do I... No, I have to. I have to shut the game down. I have to. I have to.
반드시 슬라이드. 반드시 슬라이드. 어쩌고? 뭐지?
Oh,
Hi!
I'm still here. Here in this pile of rubbish.
You
With
still here?
You, who thought you were so clever.
뭐지?
Now look where we are.
무적 캡틴
My
사우루스
entire
현실
game was
버전인가?
destroyed. It was the only thing in the world that was mine, and you've run it into the ground.
하긴 학교에서
What, did you
로켓
think
하나
that would be funny?
나가려면은
You just had to see.
학교 건물이
Didn't
이렇게
I
되는 게
impress upon
맞긴
you
해.
how important it was to be like Stanley? He actually knows how to do what I tell him to. He understands that if I say to
존나
do something, there's a damn good reason for it.
Damn good reason.
That thought hadn't even occurred to you, had it? That there's a world outside of you? You're a child.
헐, 어린애래.
My story. If you'd just gone through the door on the left, you would have seen it. There was a whole underground facility. You would have destroyed
거짓말.
it and been victorious. It would have been so perfect. I worked so hard on it. I tried so hard to make
맞아? 뭐야, 없어졌다.
behave exactly as Stanley would. That means choosing responsibly and always putting the story first. I'm quite sure you'll be up to the task. Just follow my lead and you'll be fine. All right. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
용?
No! Why did you do that? Quickly,
뭐야,
hurry
똑같잖아. 뭐야, 달라.
behave exactly as Stanley would. That means choosing responsibly
맞아.
and always putting the
아니야,
story
그래요,
first.
오른쪽으로
I'm quite
갈게요.
sure you'll
이러고서
be up to the
오른쪽으로 갔을
task.
때.
Just follow my lead and you'll be fine. All right. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. No! Why did you do that? Quickly, hurry back.
까비.
Behave exactly as Stanley would.
완전 빨리
That
가면
means
어때?
choosing
문
responsibly
닫히나?
and always putting the story first. I'm quite sure you'll be up to the task. Just follow my lead
아저씨,
and
문
you'll be
열어주세요.
fine. All right. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
안 되네. 이번에 왼쪽으로 갔으니까 선물을 주시겠죠?
Yet there was not a
오,
single person here
해고당하지 않는
either.
꿀팁.
Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
이익이익 사이에 예언이 있어. 무료 게임 수익화?
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
기억나.
Stepping inside his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this until he saw the door with a voice receiver next to it. Surely behind this door lay all the answers to his questions. And beyond all probability, he knew the passcode. He had seen it on his boss's computer just last week. Night Shark 115. Was this the code
Night
to open
Shark
the door? Would it
115.
still work? There was only one way to find out.
음성인식이 되는
Stanley had
게임이었어?
been trained never
Night
to speak
Shark
up, but now
115.
he would draw from within himself the courage to face the unknown. He drew a sharp breath and then spoke the code. Stanley spoke the code. Night Shark 115. He spoke it into the receiver, right there on the wall.
Night Shark 115. Night Shark 115.
I'm sorry, is there a problem?
음성인식이 안
mishear
돼요.
me, did you? Please speak the code into the receiver.
음성인식이
Otherwise,
안
we
된.
can't get on with the story. This is a crucial step.
안 된다고. Night Shark 115.
Okay, fine. You're not going to do it. But you know
안
what?
된다고.
It's pretty humiliating to bring you this far, only for you to suddenly decide you have better things to do. I asked you for this one single thing, for your respect. The kind of respect Stanley shows for his choices. He knows what it means to take a story seriously. If you didn't want to see what I had to show you, then why did you come here? You had a choice, you know. You could have gone through the door on the right. You could have done whatever the hell you wanted over there. Why did you come this way? Speak. Say something to me. Explain yourself, you coward. You... When Stanley came to a set of two open doors,
나다.
he entered the door on his left.
Stanley.
Stanley? Hello? Are you... Is everything okay? Stanley, please.
나
I need you to make
탈출한 것 같아.
I need you to walk through the door. Are you listening to me?
루메티얼.
Everything all right? Stanley, this is important. I need you
루메티얼.
to make a decision. It cannot exist without you. Do you understand me? Whatever choice you make is just fine.
아니 근데 바뀐 게 없는데 뭐지?
I'll accept whatever you do. I simply need you to take that step.
아니 이러는
forward,
1이랑 다를 게 없는데?
Choose. Do something. Anything. This is more important than you can ever know. I need this. The story needs it. So, you hear me? Are you there? Are you listening to this? Stanley, are you there? Okay.
뭐지?
It's okay, I can wait.
뭐지?
You need time to decide. Time to make sure your choice is correct. That is the best choice. That's all right. I'll wait for you to decide what's the right thing to do. Take as much time as you need.
끝난 거야? 몰라.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
그렇다면 좀 더 창의적으로 화를 내볼까요?
When Stanley came to a set of two
왼쪽
open
문으로
doors,
가고
he entered the door on his left. Yet there was not a single person here either.
아무도
Feeling a
없었고
wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Coming to a staircase, Stanley
우와,
walked
밑에 왜 열려
upstairs to
있음?
his boss's office.
뭐라 써 있는 거지? 주차장이다.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss. Admitting he had left his post during work hours, he might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk?
시원한
All because he
음료.
believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence
우와,
in a
무한
single moment
반복인가
for
봐.
no reason at all. None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down?
어,
Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he
Oh.
went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No,
Ooh.
Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming! He yelled. This is all a dream.
그러게. 이거 불 안 들어왔었는데 너무
To
무서워.
have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself
이거 원래
flying,
그건데.
began to gently float above the ground. Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical
올라가.
starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And
뭐지?
then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he
시끄러들이.
thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words
마침
was quite a
빙글빙글
shock
도는
to Stanley.
타이밍.
After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin,
담요의
the
무게
press of the
매트리스?
mattress on his back,
침대야?
the fresh air of a world
진짜
outside
아야발
this one.
꿈인가?
Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been.
약간 최면 거는 것
My
같다.
life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay.
응? 꿈 아닌데?
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just
우와.
someone tell me I am real. I must be real.
좀 빨개져.
Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black.
뭐지?
This is the story of a woman named
뭐야?
Mariella. Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and
뭐야?
walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments, she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day, the very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
이게 엔딩인가 봐.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean?
아, 저
Stanley
과거에도
decided to go to the
똑같았어요?
meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed
아,
an hour.
그래? 역시 새로운 콘텐츠.
Oh, new content?
DLC다.
What does that mean? New content.
DLC다. 오, 이건가? 뭘까?
Hello, and thank you for playing the Stanley
뭐야?
Parable Ultra Deluxe. As you may know, the Stanley Parable was a video game released in 2013 on home computers. After receiving
게임
critical and
공장
commercial success, it was expanded upon in 2022 with the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, a reimagining of the game for consoles and home computers. The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe features exciting new content that broadens and expands the world of the Stanley
더
Parable,
많은 것.
delighting audiences the world over. Please step inside and see what thrilling new adventures await in the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe.
Oh, well, this sounds delightful. I'm very excited to see the thrilling new Ultra Deluxe content. Okay,
Wow.
so far it's an elevator. Nothing special yet, but I'm sure it's just the beginning of a mesmerizing adventure. Is it broken?
뭐야?
What's going
안
on
내려가는데요. 버튼이
Should we-
없는데?
Should we be moving somewhere or up? Oh, here we go.
Oh,
All right,
간다, 간다,
finally,
간다, 간다.
at long last, it's on to the new content. I've
와.
never been more ready.
오른쪽으로
Let's do
문이
it.
열리겠죠. 왼쪽으로 탔으니까. 그러니까 양쪽에 문을 달아놨겠죠?
I have to say, initial impressions of Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, mostly tedious. It's as
되게
if the-
낡았네?
Oh, okay. Let's see the content. Give me the
이럴 줄
content,
알았지.
Stanley.
점프 가능한 원.
All right, let's see. It's the jump circle.
오! 남은 점프. 뚠뚠뚠뚠뚠뚠뚠뚠뚠뚠 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 해줄 줄 알았지. 안 해야지.
Is that it?
네!
Surely that's not all the new content. There has to be something else, right?
밀당.
Goodness. Another elevator. Stanley, I have to say, initial impressions of this game are not positive. It's just elevators and jumping. Is this what passes for exciting new content? If this is new content, then I could just read you the whole dictionary. There's 20 hours of new content right there. Hell, I could
이거
count
약간
to
보험
30
같은데,
trillion.
제작자의
You could put that
보험.
on the box. The Stanley
이거 뭔가
Parable
재미없다고
Ultra
할까봐
Deluxe.
초반에
Now
이런
there are
콘텐츠 먹고
1,000
약간
hours
보험
of
드는
new
거 아니야?
content. And oh, wait. There's more. Very good. Yes. I knew there had to be something else. Let's see
점프를
it.
할 수 있는 원을
I'm
왜
ready for whatever it
알려줬을까?
is.
어,
That's it? Oh, you've got to be kidding me. You see, Stanley? This is
So?
what happens when greedy video game developers with no respect for their fan base rush a cheap expansion to market for no reason other than to make an easy dollar. And don't get me started on the level of craftsmanship that's gone into it. In fact, I'm looking right now at the game's achievements, and it's hard to believe one of them actually says, "Test achievement, please ignore." What quality assurance department signed off on this? I'm infuriated and I'm offended, and I intend to find these people on Twitter and hold them personally accountable. It's my fault, Stanley. I built up too much anticipation around the new
진짜
content,
끝이야?
I'm afraid. It could never have lived up to
아니겠지?
such expectations. If you're still with me, why don't we just reset the game and we'll try to get back to what the Stanley Parable is really about.
에바지. 야, 25,000원을
frills, no
넘겨줬는데.
gimmicks. Just you and me having a great time together like always.
아, 우리 안 친했어요,
What do you
아저씨.
say, friend?
프렌즈예요. 그대로 427번. 바뀌었다. 월요일 싫어. 월요일 싫어.
Stanley, come over here. In the vent. I want to show you something.
싫어요.
Oh, you don't want to see the cool surprise I made for you? Well, fine.
뭔데요?
You're a dork anyway, so who cares?
아유, 반복이네. 한번 가보자.
Oh, never mind. You're not a dork.
아저씨, 나 다시 왔는데? 아무 말 안 해요? 아저씨! 다 줬다. 커피에 미치다. 뭐지?
Okay, you remember how cheap and unsatisfying the new Ultra Deluxe content turned out to be? Well, it got me thinking about the past and how much better the Stanley Parable used to be. So I made
우와,
something
뭐야?
special and tucked it away here where the
뭐야?
game's developers won't find it. Just
엘든미?
our little secret. Take a look.
이게
I
뭐야?
call it the Memory Zone. It's where I've been storing all my favorite memories so I can relive the peak experiences of my life
추억의
whenever I
공간.
want. Experiences
Stanley
like the
Parable?
launch of the Stanley Parable on PC. You see, Stanley, doesn't the Memory
뭐야,
Zone
이거?
remind you of how wonderful Stanley Parable was before it was sullied with a cheap
뭐야, 이거
re-release?
딴 건데
Remember back in
바꿔놨는데요?
October of 2013 when the game originally
라스트 오브
launched?
어스잖아.
Back then, video games had integrity. Back
아니,
then,
이거
it all
라오는데요?
meant something. Oh, the waste.
밑에 라스트 오브 어스라고 써있는데? 좋았던 한때. 오리지널. 수상 후보. 수상 후보. 따지 못했나봐. 대학들은 가난한 학생들을 위해 덜 노력한다. 50% 할인 명품 모자. 하지만 작은 생명체가 나머지 절반을 소유합니다. 뭐야?
And over here is where I keep reviews of the Stanley Parable. Like this stunning triumph of games journalism, 10 out of 10 from
답은 간단하죠. 하지 마세요.
James Stephanie Sterling writes, and I quote, "Where so many games that aspire to be more than games end up less than any form of art, Stanley Parable strives and then succeeds to be every game ever created."
그렇게 안 써
Did you
있는데요?
hear that, Stanley? Every game ever created. That's how grand and all-encompassing the original Stanley Parable was. It was literally every game ever created. It was Skyrim. It was Persona 3. It was all of them. And now,
어?
it's nothing.
맞아?
It's no games at all. It isn't even the Stanley Parable anymore. It's just a husk now. A lifeless husk with an hour of new elevator content.
문 열렸다. 오리지널. 추억의 공간 보수구역. 파이어! 뭔데? 뭐죠? 올해의 인물. 어? 저 얼굴 아까도 있던데?
Here's another moving passage, this time from GameSpot.com. The Stanley Parable is both a richly stimulating
오!
commentary on the nature of
이분은
choice in games and one that
엄청 좋게
offers some of the most
써줬네.
enjoyable, surprising and rewarding choices I've ever been confronted with in a game. 9 out of 10. Don't you get it, Stanley? The game was perfect. It didn't need anything else. It didn't need new content. It just needed to be left alone. To spend the rest of time
받은 적이
collecting
없다고?
dust
아,
in
저
the
밑에
hallowed
봐봐.
hall of
장점.
beloved
특출나게
video
재미있음.
game memories.
결국은 재밌다고 쏟아줬어. 점프 못하는데? 어디로 가야 된다? 원이 없는걸요? 뭘까? 다시 돌아가야 되나?
These were simpler times, Stanley.
어?
But I wouldn't give to go back.
아, 여기
Have it all
열렸네.
over again. Wait, hang on. I
왜요?
don't recall this part of the memory zone before. What's this?
무너졌는데?
What's down here? Oh no! Oh God, no! Stanley, it's a collection of reviews from Steam,
평가
the online video
모음집이래.
game distributor. I haven't looked at these in years. I can't even imagine what's being collected down
막표 있는 거
here.
아니야?
Surely these reviews were glowing as well, weren't they?
나 좀 무서울지도. 나중에 내 게임도 이러면
Honestly,
어떡해.
I could not be bothered to play this game to full completion. The narrator is obnoxious and unfunny, with his humor and dialogue proving to be more irritating than entertaining. Unfunny? I'm not trying to be funny. I'm trying to make a serious work of art. I suppose I could write up a handful of gags to insert
아니
into the
근데
Stanley Parable,
원본이
but
할
the game
때가
is already
있긴
such a
하지만.
densely layered web of profound
아무튼.
philosophical insights that I can't even imagine where I'd have the room to stick them.
네. 여기도 비추.
Okay, let's see what this one says.
게임의 아이디어는 좋았지만
While the
복수
idea of the
결말과
game is
패러디 요소가
good,
있음에도 단조롭고
for someone who
지루했습니다.
prefers non-linear games, this preachiness gets annoying fast. Preachy? Stanley, I'm not preachy, am I?
맞아요.
You can tell me if
설교적이에요.
I'm preachy. Honestly, you can. Oh goodness, this is actually quite shocking for me.
솔직하게 말해달라고 해서
I always, well, to be
상처
honest,
안
I have
받으셔야
always
되지.
thought of the game's dialogue as being rather terse to begin with. You
그쵸.
can't know how much fluff I cut from the game to get it
이게요?
to feel as light and airy as it.
오.
Well, I thought it did, but maybe it wasn't.
그럴 수 있어요.
Dear, what an awful memory to have to hold on to. These black marks
이게
on my
원래
otherwise
본인은 쳐냈다고
unimpeachable
생각해도
track
덜어내지
record.
못한 게 많이 있는
I
편이죠.
feel like a failure. Like I let these people down.
평가.
Perhaps the Stanley
프레사의
Parable
스티커 붙어
isn't
있어요,
quite as
평가에.
sterling as I always remembered.
아니에요. 재밌었어요.
What's this one got to say? You constantly have to stop doing anything so the narrator can catch up with his long-winded explanations of what's happening. I wish there was a skip button.
우와. 해석 되게
skip button.
잘해놨다.
Well, yes. Yes, I think we can do that. If I'm truly too preachy, then maybe letting you skip ahead for just a moment, surely it couldn't hurt.
스킵
Not if
버튼
it
주는
means we can
거예요?
strike these negative reviews from the record.
뭐 생긴다.
Only
뭐야?
positive reviews of the Stanley Parable. That's my
우와,
motto,
뭐야?
and it's always been my motto. I'd do anything for the customer, Stanley. Yes, a skip button we shall have.
우와.
And here it is. Go ahead and give it a shot. I'll pop you
여기
forward in
뒤에는
time
뭘까?
so that the second my incessant droning starts to bore you, with just the push of a button, you'll have zipped right past it. It's what the players have been asking for, and I'm very proud to have
못
delivered.
올라가나?
No more listening to me rambling on and on and on. No. The Stanley Parable is a game for the people. And if the people want silence, then by goodness, that's
우와,
what they're
지금
going to
시각이랑
get.
똑같아요.
Well, don't sit around waiting for me
이래서
to
이거
shut up.
넣으라고 한
Go
건가
ahead and make
봐요.
me shut up. Here, we'll pretend that I've just begun an interminable monologue, and it goes something like this. The story and the choices, or what have you,
어디
and
한번
therefore by
해보시오.
becoming it is, so on and so forth, until inevitably,
얼마나 녹음했는지
we all until the
궁금한데?
end of time, at which time everything all at once. So now you see, blah 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 blah. We've eaten too much, and it can't be just yet. No, until 245. But the logic of elimination working backwards, the deduction therefore becomes impossible to manufacture. It went on for nearly 10,000 years, until just yesterday, here and there, forward and back, and never a moment before lunchtime. It can't be. It's the only thing there is. How many billions left until so much more than forever ago? Which is why I say,
the story, and the choices. All
뭐야,
what
무한
have you. And
반복인데? 이거 아까
therefore, by
나왔던
becoming
거잖아.
it is, so on and so forth, until inevitably, we all until the end of time, at which time everything all at once. So now you see, blah 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 blah.
블라블라로
We've
채우나?
eaten too much, and it can't be just yet. No, no, until 245. Got the logic of elimination working backwards. The deduction therefore becomes impossible to manufacture. It went on for nearly.
반복을
You're
넣어버리다니.
back, you see.
반칙.
You were only frozen in time for a few minutes, but it was plenty of time for me to deliver a
또 스킵 안 돼요? 이 아저씨 또 시작하는데요?
Well, there, sport. You really did catch me rambling on a bit, didn't you? But that's the power of the button. The minute I start to go off on a thoughtless display of
지금요,
self-absorption...
지금요!
Okay, welcome back, Stanley. Now, I should say that the amount of time the button has been skipping through is becoming longer and longer. That last one was, well, I want to say maybe
뭐
30,
없는데?
45 minutes? It's not unendurable by any means, but it's, well... Stanley, please don't push the button again. It's been 12 hours. You've just been frozen
아니,
there.
아저씨!
I don't know why the skips are getting longer, but they're really, truly getting longer.
이거
And
시계
my
안
God, there's
맞아요,
no way out of
형님.
the room. Oh, Stanley, you're back. You're back. Oh my goodness.
오,
I have
시간이 막
someone to
바뀐다.
talk to again. Stanley, I think it's been a week
일주일이요?
or 2 weeks.
어쩌를 알아?
Oh, hello. It's
아저씨
you.
방송해
You're here
보실래요?
again. Welcome. I have had
오,
time to think
12시
about you
55분.
and about us and about everything.
어떡해. 식물 다 죽었어. 아저씨 없어졌는데? 뭐야? 알람 울려.
But they didn't understand the game was never meant to be funny. It was meant to have a point. It was meant to
와,
speak to the
아저씨
human
죽으시다 오셨나
condition.
본데?
But where are the jokes? Where are the jokes? They bemoaned, they screamed, they gnashed their teeth and said, entertain us. It wasn't enough. They had to leave a pathetic little
아저씨
thumbs down
비추천
review
평가
and
좀
make
마음이
all
많이
their
남으셨나
pitiful demands.
봐요.
But then he's
아저씨
talking
그런 거
too much.
보시면 안
They said,
돼요.
First, he didn't entertain us. Now he won't shut up. It's the inconsistency. It's the lack of accountability. It's the unwillingness to examine with an
세상에, 화가 많이
uncompromising heart
나셨네.
the words that they are speaking into the world. As though there were no consequences
예,
for a
맞죠,
lack of
맞죠.
cohesion in one's assessment of others. But of course,
어이구.
absolutely anyone can leave a review. So
뭐야?
here's what we get. We get these demands that seek everything
어이구,
and are accountable to
세상에.
nothing. We get a world where
어이구,
someone will say,
세상에.
oh, there should be a skip
에,
button.
스킵 버튼 좋죠. 아저씨? 잠방하러 가셨니?
Is never the end, is never the end, is never the end, is
Never
never
the
the
end,
end, is
never
never
the
the
end,
end,
is
is never
never
the
the
end,
end,
is
is
never
never
the
the
end,
end,
is
is never
never
the
the
end,
end,
is
is
never
never
the
the
end,
end, is
never
never
is the end, never is the end, never is the end. 물소리 난다. 물 떨어져. 비 온다. 오. 홍수야, 홍수. 태풍이야, 태풍. 와우. 굿모닝. 이렇게 문자를 보내. 하늘이 겠어. 우와. 고사리? 우와. 뭔가 포탈 같아. 뭐야? 아야발꿈? 뭐지? 뭐야, 스킵 버튼도 없어졌어. 우와! 우리 건물만 남았어요. 아포칼립스인가봐요. 올라가 보고 싶었어. 못 올라가게 해놨네? 왜요? 버튼 고장났던데? 뭐라? 저쪽에 나무같이 생긴 구름은 있는데. 어라? 뭐야,
All of his
돌아왔어.
co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
어라? 새로운
Oh, good.
콘텐츠.
You noticed my sign. Yes, I have something very exciting to show you.
오, 엔딩이었나봐요. 뭐지? 근데 이거
You
말고
see,
다른
Stanley,
선택지가
I've been
있었나?
reflecting on the Stanley parable and about how roundly disappointing this ultra deluxe version has turned out to be. The original Stanley parable was a landmark, and any new content for it should live up to that legacy. So forget this ultra deluxe nonsense. I say we take it one step even further. Which is why I'm very proud to announce for the first time ever the Stanley Parable 2.
어머, 깜짝이야. 아까랑 다른데요?
Yes, you see, isn't this far superior
와,
to a
나도 세상에
measly
다녀온
re-release
거랑
with a few
비슷하다.
minor additions? Think of all the
또다시
new territory we'll cover
427.
with a fully fledged sequel. An
투자자
entirely new
쇼케이스.
experience, built from the ground up. Why, there are so many possibilities. It could go in
프린트
so
두 개를
many
동시에
different directions.
테스트.
This is what fans have truly been asking for.
와,
Calling it
뭐야?
the Stanley Parable 2 is just so much catchier than Ultra Deluxe, don't you think? Ultra Deluxe? What does it even mean? But the Stanley Parable 2, now that's an artistic statement
이게 다
right there.
뭐랑?
It's future-oriented. It screams progress and innovation and long-term franchising potential.
그냥 하여간 이해 관련된 건 다 써놨네. 그들이 돌아왔다. 두 개의 문. 빠밤.
Now, to be clear,
스탠리도 두
I
명이
haven't quite
됐는데?
nailed down what exactly the Stanley Parable 2 is going to be, but let's take a look at
이쪽이
some of the features
무대입니다.
I've been developing for it. I figure that if I can loosely organize a handful of interesting concepts, that surely the game will sort of naturally spring up around them.
이쪽이
It'll all
무대입니다.
work itself out. Game development is much more of a fuzzy magic than anything
features.
scientific or logical, really.
새로운 컨텐츠. 이거 타고 가는 거 아닌가? 위로 올라가게 돼 있네요. 포토존도 만들어 놓고. 와.
Here we are. Go on, try out some of the new features.
당신의 멋진 이름은 게임에서 들으세요. 이름 버튼. 즐기세요. 새로운 컨텐츠를. 스샷 금지. 스샷 찍으면 바뀌나? 3시 44분. 없는데? 점프 가능한 원, 끝없는 구멍 하나씩 해볼까요?
For the Stanley Parable 2, I asked myself, what do players really want? And of course, the first and most obvious
딱
answer
알맞음.
is that they want to be individually recognized and validated as people. So with that in mind, my first addition to the game is this. Sorry, I should have clarified. Right now, the button only says
지금
the name
저보고
Jim.
짐이라는
But of
거예요?
course, in the final game, this button will say your name, whatever name that is. Here,
나보고
let's have you
짐이라고?
roleplay as Jim to really simulate the full experience of this feature. Just play along. I promise you'll love it. Okay, here we go. Let's take a deep breath, clear your mind, forget whoever you are, and simply become a person named Jim. I want you to imagine yourself...
Jim.
Whoa, hold on. I wasn't finished setting up the backstory.
아니, 내가
If you
짐이
don't properly
아닌걸요.
roleplay as Jim, then you'll never understand the impact of this button. Otherwise, it's just a stupid button that says somebody else's name.
맞잖아, 스튜피드
Okay,
버튼.
we're doing it again, and this time let
마흔
me finish
어쩌다?
first. Now, allow yourself to become Jim. Imagine yourself driving to work.
Jim.
All right, fine, whatever. It's just a
Jim.
meaningless button that says Jim. Are you
네,
happy
맞아요.
now? Get out of here.
만족해요.
I'm done with this button. Why don't you go humiliate me in front of a different feature that I worked very hard on?
호준이가 만든 또 다른 요소인데
See,
망했잖아.
if you'd only played along, that would have been
거짓말.
your name the button says.
핑계
but
니은.
no. Instead, I can't even think
Jim.
about it. I'm taking the Jim button away.
짐. 안 돼, 짐.
Jim.
짐. No, 짐.
Jim.
짐 갔어. 슬퍼. 이런.
Maybe I'll only
뭐야?
let people named Jim play the Stanley
이거는
Parable
이거야?
too. They would appreciate what I've created here.
뭐지? 다른 데로 가볼까요? 에필로그. 일단 저쪽 먼저 가보자. 짐. 저쪽에도 사람 같은 거 뭐 있는데? 공짜로 새롭고 쉬운 도전 과제 얻기. 끝없는 구멍. 어디 갈까요? 엑스포 홀 가이드. 얘가 점프다. 점프
You know what,
가능한
Stanley?
원.
I actually think the jump circle was a pretty good idea. I'd like to hang on to that for the sequel.
이제 못해. 아까 거기서 다 해서 그런가 봐. 저거 돌아간 거 같지 않아요? 돌아가네? 끝없는 구멍 끝나지 않아요.
Okay, I'll be honest, I haven't yet decided on this one. I think that in the new version, the office could use a bit of decoration,
뭐야,
like
다쳤는데?
balloons. But I'm undecided on Get Well Someday and Happy 12th Birthday. Which would you go with?
어떻게 대답해? 언젠가 잘 될 거야 버튼.
You know, sometimes when you solicit another person's opinion,
얘가
it
하트가
makes you
들어가서 더 예뻐.
realize that you knew which one you actually really wanted all along. Happy 12th birthday, step-niece, it is.
뭐지? 왜 물어본겨? 우와! 바뀌었어 그림이.
Or actually, maybe I should have gone with... No. I've made my decision, we're moving on.
오, 상품도 있고 안심을 주는 양동이.
A common complaint of the Stanley Parable was that it was confusing and paradoxical. That it
뭘까요?
engendered a chaotic sense of
양동이가
reckless
없는데?
despair in those who played it. Well, I'm happy to say that after much consideration, I've engineered a clever solution to this fundamental problem.
천재적인
of the game.
방안?
It's the Stanley Parable
온다!
Reassurance Bucket. You see, Stanley, anytime you're holding the bucket, a sense of calm and ease will fill your mind and your heart. It's true. As long as you hold on to the bucket, the many disorienting contradictions of the Stanley Parable will feel perfectly normal and perhaps even comforting. You may even come to long for the gentle embrace of jarring cognitive dissonance while the bucket is in your arms. And to be honest, it's a much more convenient solution for me than actually redesigning the game to be less uncomfortable. Can you imagine what a pain in the ass that would be? Yes, the bucket is the perfect solution. Come on, give it a try. Can you feel it? The glow of comfort, even in the face of crushing despair,
뭐지?
must already be sweeping through your body. And in fact, can I say that I do believe the bucket lends you an air of charisma as well?
제가요? 이걸
I think
들고
that
있어서
just holding it
카리스마가요?
has made you the slightest bit more attractive as a person. The benefits of the bucket seem to go on and on, don't they?
아니 화면 가리기
All
아니
this
이렇게
and
잘
more
만들었어
await you
정교하게.
in the Stanley Parable 2.
쉬운데요? Jim. You know, Jim. 아니 이거 들고 다니라고? 진짜?
Does anyone give out awards for most enjoyable bucket
아니
in a
화면
video game?
가리잖아.
That really should be an award if it isn't already.
Jim. 출구 있다. 끝없는 구멍. 어때요? 좀 카리스마 넘쳐 보이나요? 내려놓을 수 있는 방법이 없네? 머나먼 미래, 추락, 구멍 깊이 무한대. 아? 아이씨.
Stanley, here's an idea that I'm truly fond of. It's never been done before in a video game. This is in fact a hole that you can fall
영문이
down
떨어질
forever.
수
That's
있는
right.
구멍.
Infinite falling. You can fall until the end of time if you like. A stunning leap forward for video games as a medium.
오. 천장이 닫힌다. 가볼까요? 하나, 둘, 셋!
You see, isn't it wonderful? One of my more ingenious concoctions, if I do say so. Now then,
오호라.
since you've gotten to see the infinite hole, you can press the teleport button to pop back up to the top, and we can continue onward. Now, I don't mean to be a bummer, but I do recommend you use the teleport
진짜
button to go
아무것도
back to
없나
the
봐.
top. Maybe do it on the... Great! Now, I'm very excited to show
어,
you
뭐야,
even
여기?
more of my ideas for the
아, 아까
sequel.
거기 천장 닫힌 데구나. 뭐 없네? 뭔가 평가가 안 좋은 거에 대해서 안 좋은 생각이 들었다지만 진짜 재미가 없는데. 여기서 받아가세요. 레버를 당기세요. 도전 과제를 받으세요.
Now here's something special. You remember that broken test achievement that got left in the game on accident? Well, I'm developing a technology to simply give you the achievement. Yes. You see, you'll come to this lever.
아, 이거 레버만 하면은 달성되는 거예요?
This is technology that will exist. Right now, the
안
achievement
되는데?
is still fully broken. I'm not a wizard, Stanley, but I guarantee it will be fixed in
아,
the
지금
sequel to at last
못한다고?
satisfy the hordes of ravenous fans all over the world who have been uproariously demanding this feature. Gamers, we hear you, and I promise it will happen.
아니, 고치고 출시하라고.
What else? What other exhibits haven't we seen yet?
다 본 거 같은데? 찾을 수 있을까요? 수집 요소, 수집 요소, 수집 요소.
Ah, collectibles. Now it's a real video game. In the Stanley Parable 2, you'll
맞아?
run around gathering up these miniature Stanley figurines. And what's truly innovative is that there will be no reward for collecting
뭐야?
all of them. I don't want to stifle the intrinsic joy of watching a number go up. You simply collect all of them, and then you move the hell on with your...
아. 아? 뭐야?
God, it really is the worst when you collect everything in a video game and then they give you a big
맞아요?
fancy reward for it. Absolutely tragic.
뭐야? 출구. 아니, 뭐지? 도전 과제를 찾아야 된다는 건가? 귀찮아. 이거 사람처럼 만들어 놓은 것 같네요.
Ready to move on now?
네. 넘어갈래요. 새로운 머그잔. 뭐야 이건?
So, Stanley,
공장?
what do you think? Do you like all of the new features?
뭐가
Yes, I know
있어요?
it's not exactly clear yet how exactly these features will come together as one single coherent video game, but I can feel it in my soul. It's going to work. There's definitely a good game in there somewhere.
아무것도
Say,
없는데?
let's do an experiment. I'll arrange these new features
온다.
together, and we'll see whether or not it coheres into a meaningful gameplay experience. Okay. Are you ready? Here it is.
Yeah, I'm ready.
I give you the Stanley Parable 2.
와우.
Well, I mean, there's potential here, right? It's sort of... Okay, never mind. Hold on. Let me do a different arrangement. Okay, yes, this is much better. I feel good about this.
훨씬
Here we
낫다고?
go.
봐봐.
Version 2.
짜잔.
Who am I kidding, Stanley?
아,
This isn't a
바뀐 게
coherent video
없는데?
game at all. It's a lot of gags. And I do very much
뭐야,
enjoy
저거
creating
이름 말하는
gags, but they don't add
버튼에다가.
up to anything. I wanted more than anything to create a sequel that would capture all the magic of the first game. I wanted fans to love it. No matter how good these gags are, they won't stand on their own. They would need the structure and the gameplay of the original. Wait, maybe that's it. I can take the original
뭐야?
Stanley Parable and simply, well, insert a few of my new features into it. Tastefully, of course. With respect. With care for the vision and integrity of the original game. Would it possibly work? I suppose it could. But it would need a really, really tremendous title screen. A title screen that says with bold and uncompromising conviction, "This is the Stanley Parable 2."
Stanley
Let me see if I can put
Parable
something
2.
All right, perfect. Go ahead. Take a look.
아, 뭐야? 배경 뭐야? 설정 그대로인데? 뭐야, 나 스킵해버렸어요.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean?
풍선이 생겼고
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
양동이 안 주워. 그래도 양동이 함께 해야겠지?
Stanley picked up the bucket. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
왼쪽으로 가볼까요? 오른쪽으로 가볼까요?
This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had
여기까지는
felt the
똑같네.
bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? Well, no, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the
Bucket
door on
is
his left
wrong.
to go back to the meeting room, and so the two of them detoured through the maintenance section and walked straight ahead to the opposite door.
여기가 거기 아닌가? 엔딩 보러 가는 곳?
Oh, good, Stanley. I'm glad you found your way here. I knew you'd find this place eventually.
우린 날 아낀다고, 스탠리.
You see, your friends and I are concerned for you, Stanley. We've come together here because we care about you very much. It's this bucket you're carrying around everywhere. The bucket isn't even from the
열린다.
original Stanley Parable. It's just sequel content. We're the ones that matter, Stanley. Classic characters from the first game, like the Adventure Line and the Broom Closet. Because that's
what?
what fans want from a sequel. They want more of their favorite jokes, not this bucket that they've never seen before. Yes,
bucket.
I know I'm the one who gave you the bucket, but you're spending too much
버킷
time.
들고 다니라며.
Don't you want another story involving the adventure line? We
네.
could make the adventure line go somewhere new. Yes, yes, that's what the fans want. Let's do it.
자원물 요일매. 차가 없어졌네요.
Whee! Look at that wacky line. Who knows where it'll go off to next? Oh, and it played some silly music as well.
여기 어디야? 대구성구역. 뭔 노래지? 빰빠바바빠바빠.
Now this is what the Stanley Parable is all about. Don't you remember all those great jokes from the original dialogue?
Also, Stanley is addicted to drugs and hookers.
It's as classic now as it was back then. Let's do it for the fans, Stanley. Let's give them more content exactly like this. But if we want to do that, you're going to have to give something up. Don't you get it, Stanley? We need to get rid of the bucket.
왜요?
That's
안
why I'm very
돼요.
proud to introduce
제
a
마음이
brand new character.
편안함이라고요.
This is the Bucket Destroyer. I think it'll make a
Bucket
wonderful
Destroyer?
new addition to the rich lore of the Stanley Parable. True, it also was not in the original game, but it's such a well-fleshed-out character with so much personality that to me it already feels as though it's been part of the cast all along.
양동이를
Don't you
여기서
agree?
부셔야 되나 봐요.
Can you guess what the Bucket Destroyer does? Surely you don't need me to spell it out for you. Go ahead now,
다른
Stanley.
방법이 없나?
Say goodbye to the
무조건
bucket,
부숴야 돼요?
and then pop it into the machine when you're ready. Now listen to me. It's crucial that you give it the bucket. I don't know what the bucket destroyer will do if it can't destroy your bucket. Destroying buckets is all
안
it
돼,
knows.
양동아.
That is its singular personality trait. Sure, I
양동아.
can hear you saying, how does a character with only one personality trait deserve to
진짜
join the
고장난다.
pantheon of beloved Stanley Parable characters? Well,
뭐라?
you see, if you were to really explore the Bucket Destroyer, you would see that its desire to crush buckets is so densely loaded with complexity and nuance that it's really like 10 personality traits. What other object in this game can you even say that about? The broom closet? Certainly not. I wonder what sort of Bucket Destroyer merchandise the fans will be clamoring for after this.
뭔데?
The Bucket
점점
Destroyer
빛나기
is getting
시작했어요.
very upset now. You'll have to hurry and feed it. We can't get back to the classic Stanley Parable characters like the Adventure Line or the Bucket Destroyer until you crush that damn bucket. Quickly now, the fans are waiting. Do it, the fans, Stanley. Give the fans what they want. Hurry and...
헉. 나 죽은 거야? 뭐야?
The Bucket Destroyer, my prized creation. You had so much potential. We were going to do such marvelous things with you, tell such spell-binding stories about you. All of it squandered now. Goodbye, new friend. For the moment in time
맞아?
that you were here, you were magnificent.
전화 온다. 이게 아닌가?
Hello. This is a recorded message scheduled either by you or a person in your place of work. The purpose of this message is to warn you about the dangers of recorded messages. If at any time you believe you are listening to a recorded message, please terminate it
헬보 안
immediately
바꿔요.
and cease all flow of
신상이에요.
information from the recorded message.
걔 레스22 쓰고
Stanley
있어요.
lifted the bucket into his arms, and a wave of comfort rushed over him. Stanley
저희 아까
touched the
왼쪽
bucket
문
tightly
갔었-
to his chest
나?
and entered the door on
그래?
his left.
똑같이 가면 똑같이 나올라나?
Still
하지만
no one was
양동이가
here.
있는걸?
Stanley needed the bucket's warmth and comfort now more than ever. Perhaps his boss's office. Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the
사장실로
boss's
가는
office.
계단을 올라갔습니다. 여기 근데 똑같이
Stepping
안
into his
됐었잖아.
manager's office, Stanley was
비밀번호.
once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life.
Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have broken down into an
비밀번호
emotional
알려줘.
dumpster fire, if not for the soothing presence of the bucket. Even now, in his darkest of hours, did the bucket's warmth and guiding light pierce the dark clouds of confusion and chaos. It would be with him always. The bucket would, and he knew it. The two of them were inseparable. At this point, Stanley was so absorbed in the tender spiritual connection he shared with the bucket that he didn't notice the keypad behind the boss's desk. Nor in his bliss of simply being near the bucket did he have any notion that the PIN number for the keypad was 2845.
2845.
But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck.
야호!
Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding
뭐지?
him? Yes, this is certainly the most
열렸어.
logical explanation.
문이 열리네요.
You found one of them.
와,
One of the miniature
두
Stanley
개째.
figurines. Remember, no reward for collecting all of these. Only the
이래놓고 보석
intrinsic
있는 거
pleasure
아니야?
of a job well done. You can't buy that sort of happiness, Stanley. God knows I've tried. So, I implore you to savor each and every
매
moment
순간
you come
음미해달래.
across one of these beautiful figurines.
뭔가 굿즈를 내기 위한 발판 같달까? 내려갑니다. 왜 나레이션이 조용하지? 내려갔는데?
The elevator raced downward, plummeting towards an unknown fate. It would be all Stanley could do to keep himself together, if not for the bucket. Soothing him, comforting him, reassuring that in this darkest moment of uncertainty, he would be all right. The bucket is here for you, Stanley. Everything will be fine.
Will be fine.
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead
맞다.
through the large door that
탈출구.
read Mind Control. Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley and the bucket would both meet a
양동이가
violent
있어서 안
death.
죽어요.
The door behind them
여기까지는
was not shut.
똑같은데요?
Stanley and the bucket still had every
안
opportunity to turn
돌아가.
around
나 이거
and
다
get
알고
back on track.
왔지롱.
At this point, Stanley and the bucket were knowingly walking forward into a very painful
아까 해봤냐고
death
물어봤을 때
for each of them.
해봤다고 말했으니까 거짓말도 아니. 이거 나가는 문이 있던데?
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley and the bucket inched closer to their demise, Stanley reflected on how meaningless the bucket's warmth and comfort had turned out to be. To be sure, it puts the mind and the soul at ease to embrace the bucket, but what use is a sense of ease when you're about to be crushed to death? This is what Stanley thought to himself, and he sort of kicked himself for wasting so much time carrying a bucket everywhere. Farewell, Stanley.
살려줘!
Farewell, Stanley, cried the narrator. As
뭐야?
Stanley and the bucket were led helplessly into the
뭐야,
enormous
나레이션
metal
바뀌었어요.
jaws. In a single visceral
이랬었나?
instant, the bucket's life came to an end as it was crushed violently to death.
우와, 원래 이랬었나? The Stanley
It was a
Parable.
shame, the death of such a magnificent bucket.
어머,
It's true that all buckets are radiant in their own way, but this one stood above the rest. It was a glorious
아이고
bucket
세상에.
to behold.
산과 고양동이의 명복을 빕니다. 전시의 내용이 받아들이기 힘들더라도 열린 마음으로 받아들이시겠습니까? 양동이 전시회예요? 이게
Can you see
뭐야,
how
양동이잖아.
arrogant it was for Stanley to take a bucket like this and to claim it for his
25개의
own? Can you see
양동이.
the hubris that blinded him?
25개
Can you
맞아?
see that the bucket is far more noble than Stanley will ever be in his short
네?
life?
손잡이가 2개인 양동이. 언니. 왜? 불치옥 양동이. 왜? 요? 동굴벽화의 양동이요? 양동이 뭐야 이거? 아니 얼마나 오래된 거야?
And certainly not a
아니
bucket as dazzling to
양동이
behold as this one.
역사가 왜?
It is man who should kneel before the bucket.
매달린 양동이. 인류 사이와 양동이와 필연적인 관계를 상징적으로 보여줍니다. 떨어지라고 만들어 놓은 것 같은데? 뭐야?
But there is something we can do. Something we can do together, you and I, that will right this terrible wrong.
What?
Let Stanley die. Let him be crushed by the machine. Don't reset the game. Don't give him another opportunity to run off with another beautiful bucket. We can save the
비슷하다는 것
world's buckets
같은데?
from their treatment as tools and implements if only we let Stanley die together. The bucket shall take its place as ruler, as leader.
이거 심리 싸움인데. 이거 심리 싸움 걸었는데 이거. 이거 바꿔줘야 돼 말아야 돼. 그냥 죽을 것 같은데. 이거 심리 싸움인데 이거. 근데 아까 다시 시작하기가 없었어. 갑자기 생겼어. 오케이. 한번 다시 시작해 봅시다.
Wait, Stanley thought to himself.
말이
Am I sure
바뀌었다.
that the orders stopped coming in? How is that possible? They never stopped. Surely I was mistaken.
어라?
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
멘트가 바뀌었다. 양동이 안 가져왔다. 어머, 뭐야? 넓은 방, 많은 상자. 계단. 뭐야?
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
계단이면 여기.
Another
이럴
miniature
줄
Stanley
알았지.
figurine. This, there really must be a snappier name for these things. What about mini stands?
Mini
Stanley
stand?
things. What about Stanlerines? Yes, I think I like that. Another Stanlerine under your belt.
스탠리? 이거 반복되는 거였잖아. 또 올라가야 되나? 양동이를 안 갖고 왔네.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley was in such a rush to get through the story as quickly as possible.
그거
He didn't
봤다고요?
even have a single minute to just
빨리
let the
다음으로
narrator talk.
넘겨줘요.
That kind of anxiety isn't healthy, so he relaxed for a few moments with some calming New Age music.
뉴에이지 음악? 됐어요.
Feeling soothed and rejuvenated, Stanley calmly walked forward into the opened passageway.
이것 때문에 스킵 버튼 만들어 달라고 한 거겠죠? 내려가자. 내려가요. 쏘.
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
아, 이번에는 왠지 양동이 없어서 그거 안 나올 것 같은데. 똑같은 건가?
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible
똑같다.
secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to
맞아요.
himself. Did he have the
같았겠지.
strength to find out?
버튼 못 누르게 되어 있네. 마마바리님 감사합니다. 자, CCTV 버튼.
Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature
Wow.
revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building,
Sabi.
Stanley's co-workers. The lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing.
우리 거 어딨지? 여기인가? 400. 저기 있다. (427번) 오, 우리 방이 제일 어두운 방이었네. 뿅.
This mind control
그럼
facility,
엘리베이터가
it was too
내려오나?
horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had
스탠리 방이
Stanley
제일
really been under
작고
someone's
어두운
control all
방이었어.
this time? Was this the only reason he
오.
was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to
엘리베이터!
accept it blindly?
오픈.
No.
올라가요.
He refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control?
아까
Never.
봤던 거랑 좀
It was
비슷한데?
unthinkable, wasn't it? Was it even possible? Had he truly spent his entire life utterly blind to the world? But here was the
Blind
proof,
to the
heart of the
world?
operation. Controls labeled with emotions, happy or sad or content.
정신지배 상태?
Walking, eating, working,
오프라인?
all of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he would dismantle the controls once and
이게
for
진행게임 같은
all.
느낌인가? 여기 뭐 있다. 콘솔 비활성화. 오프라인. 여기에서 전원을 먼저 켜야 되나 본데? 5. 원이 있겠죠? Three. 1. 2. 3. 4가 4 어딨죠? 가 없는데? 저게 4인가 보다. 올라가는 데가 있었네요. 막혔는데? 어? Five? 비가동 중, 명령어 대기 중.
And when at last he
System
found
power. 오프. 미안. 뚫릴 줄 몰랐어.
blackness and a rising chill of uncertainty.
뭐라?
Was it over?
아니, 버튼을 안 막았네? 어라?
Yes. He had won. He had defeated the machine. Unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away. And yet, even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him. For it
이러고
was not
밖에 나갔던
knowledge
것
or even
같은데?
power that he had
바뀐
been
게 그렇게
seeking,
많지가 않네요.
but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone
몰라?
tell him where to go, what to do, or how to feel. Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps
이거는 완전
the only
똑같네.
thing.
넣어주시죠.
The
양동이.
confusion and the chaos all seemed to melt away. as
양동이를
Stanley
가지고 저
embraced the
엔딩을
bucket.
한번 봐봅시다.
Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to
네,
his chest and
양동이가
entered the door on his
딱
left.
변화의 중심인가 봐요. 얘가 있어야지만 뭐가 되나 봐.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the
방금 한
boss's
대로
office.
오면은 금방 갈 수 있을 듯.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life.
자,
But Stanley
UAG
guessed
하나
the correct
듣고.
code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew
우와,
all along?
UAG도 안
Was the
알려주네요.
bucket guiding him?
오,
Yes, this is certainly the most logical.
양동이를 가지고
explanation.
있으면 어차피 간다는 걸 알고서는 DLC니까 그냥 보내주나봐, 스킵해주나봐. 아니, 리뷰에 있는 스킵이 굉장히 마음이 아팠나 본데? 아니, 이 정도 찔린 거는 진짜 리얼인데?
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control Facility.
Mind control.
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television
아,
screens.
이게 불 켜는
What horrible
버튼이네.
secret did this place hold? Stanley and the bucket both wondered to themselves.
아마 저 탈출구로 갔으면 그 다시 시작 안 해도 죽었을 것 같아요.
The monitors jumped to life, and Stanley nearly dropped the bucket in shock. Everyone in the office was being videotaped, monitored like guinea pigs.
그냥
The
죽였을
bucket
것
had
같아.
never seen anything like this, and it very nearly burst into tears as Stanley cradled it gently,
아,
reassuring it that
맞나
everything would
봐.
be fine.
그건 것 같아요.
Was the bucket under the mind control facility's influence as well? Had the bucket been told to do things it
내려오고
didn't wish
똑같이
to
가나?
do? What kinds of things does a bucket want to do or not want to do in the first place? These questions raced furiously in Stanley's feeble mind. No! He screamed into the bucket. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control. Never! He squeezed
Never.
the bucket tighter. His one friend in the entire world. At this point, he could trust no one except the bucket.
양동이는 믿을 수 있어?
But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions, happy or sad or content. Walking, eating, working,
위로
all
올라갈
of
수
it
있는
monitored
방법이
and
없을까?
commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he and the bucket would dismantle the controls for good. Two best friends, Stanley and the bucket, up against the world. They high-fived in a really cool way, and the bucket made a sassy comment about taking
삼이 저
down
위에
the
있나?
system.
4가 저 위에 있네요. 저 올라갈 수가 없나? 4 저기 있는데. 일부러 불편하게 이렇게 만들어놨나? 양동이 못 던짐. 일단은 아까랑 다른지 똑같은지 보려면 오프를 눌러봐야겠죠?
When at last they came to the salt, Stanley and the bucket waited in blackness. Was it over? Yes, they had done it. Stanley and the bucket had defeated their greatest and darkest enemy, freed themselves from the tyrannical grip of the evil mind control machine. Freedom was now mere moments away. Excitedly, the two of them began to discuss the kind of life they wanted to live once they stepped through this massive door. The bucket wanted to learn to roller skate. Stanley wanted to sneeze in every country on Earth. Both of them wanted to begin watching a movie, any movie, but then stop it halfway through and begin watching it in reverse from the end. True, it was a simple life they envisioned, but it was one they'd lived together, with one another to lean on, to trust, to support, and...
멈췄다.
What? Wait. What was happening? Why had the door stopped? Was Stanley and the bucket not about to be freed? An unbearable silence filled the room, lingering in uncertainty, until finally the truth hit Stanley square in the face. This building did not want the bucket to leave. Even the facility itself recognized the incredible calming presence of the bucket, needed the
문 다시
soothing warmth
닫힌다.
or go to any lengths not to part with the bucket. No. Stanley can't leave this place. Not while he has such a precious bucket in his arms. Not while this building has anything to say about it.
뭔가 눈이 감기는
he would
것처럼
never again leave
연출해놨네.
this very room. But at least he has the bucket. To be trapped eternally in darkness isn't really so bad, Stanley thought to himself. As long as I have my bucket with me, right? I'll be okay, won't I? Stanley gulped. Very soon now. He was
Very
about to
soon
find out.
now. 뭐야? 모임?
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it
양동이가
mean?
있으면은 일단
Stanley
밖에 못
decided to go to the
나가고.
meeting room.
Warmth spread through Stanley's arms. With the bucket in his arms again, he was home.
뭐가 없네?
Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
아까 오른쪽은 가봤었고. 하유. 저거는 다 찾아도 상관없었다 그랬고.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to
정신집에
the
온
boss's office.
누르면은 똑같이 계속.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone
자,
had vanished.
여기도 무한반복은
His boss would think he
똑같아요.
was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. He looked down at the bucket in his arms. Am I crazy? He asked the bucket. The bucket returned his gaze, but said nothing
눈이
at
없는데
all.
어떻게 바라봐?
That's strange, Stanley thought. Usually the bucket is a source of guidance and wisdom for me in difficult times such as these. He held the bucket close, yet felt none of its familiar reassurance and comfort. And that's when Stanley realized, this isn't my bucket.
It's just a normal, everyday bucket. Someone else's bucket, perhaps.
Oh?
How did I end up with someone else's bucket? This is all terribly wrong. Surely no good would come from this. Who knows what sorts of bizarre hallucinations Stanley might experience without the psychologically grounding presence of his bucket. And indeed, now he noticed that the rooms were repeating, which was, of course, very odd. And now he felt himself floating off the ground. Oh, gracious, he exclaimed. Without my bucket,
뭐야?
I've gone truly mad. Where is it? I must find it. Far off in the distance now, he heard.
다른 게 없는 것 같은데?
Stanley! Stanley, it's me!
Stanley!
Could it truly be? He rushed forward from room to room, passing by one bucket after the next. None of them were his.
뭐야,
None of them
버킷
were his
완전 많아.
special bucket.
Come to me, Stanley! Find me!
He had to find the bucket. He had to return to his old friend. It was the only way to truly restore his sanity. And then suddenly, he froze dead in his tracks. He knew where the voice of the bucket had been coming from. The real bucket was inside of him all along. It was incredibly painful.
Uh-oh.
Stanley doubled over in agony and blacked out.
This is the story of a woman named
뭐야,
Mariella.
똑같네.
Mariella
버킷
woke up on
이제
a
머리
day like
뒤집어
any
쓰고
other.
있을라나?
She arose, got dressed, picked up her bucket of comfort and security, and walked to her place of work.
아이씨,
But on this particular day,
양동이
her
들고
walk was
있어.
interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town, talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. Right away, she knew what the problem was. This man had no bucket. Of course, he'd gone mad, ranting and raving about a narrator describing all of his actions and how everything is predetermined and free will is an illusion and it's all just a video game. It could all have been prevented if only he'd taken his bucket with him. Perhaps he didn't even realize he'd forgotten his bucket at home in the first place. How cruel the world can be, Mariella thought, and she hugged her own bucket even tighter. But of course, she had no time for this. There were a myriad of confusing problems she would soon have to confront at work, for which her bucket would provide absolute guidance and total clarity on everything. Heck yes, she thought to herself, my life kicks ass. And she backflipped all the way to work.
뒤로 공중제비를 돌면서 직장으로 갔대.
Stanley knew the office layout like the back of his hand.
그
It
다음은
was only a
완전히
matter of
똑같은가
time before
봐요.
he found the others, wherever they were. Stanley picked up the bucket and smiled. He'd never be
Smile.
alone again, not truly alone, not with the bucket around. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest. This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but
오른쪽.
Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be.
자,
And here it
여기까지
was. Had the
왔었고
bucket turned out to be correct? No, never mind. The bucket
첫
was
번째
wrong.
방으로 가라고 하겠지?
Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room. And so the two of them detoured through the maintenance section and walked straight ahead to the opposite door.
Nope.
Oh, good Stanley, I'm glad you found your way
찾아와줘서
here. I
고맙대.
knew you'd find this place eventually. You see, your
왠지
friends and I are
이쪽에 뭐 하나
concerned
있을
for
것
you,
같지
Stanley.
않나요?
We've come together here because we care about you very much. It's this bucket you're carrying around everywhere. The bucket isn't even from the original Stanley Parable. It's just sequel content. We're the ones that matter, Stanley. Classic
안녕히
characters from the
계세요.
first game, like the Adventure Line and the Broom Closet. Because that's what fans want from a sequel. They want more of their favorite jokes, not this bucket that they've never seen before.
딱히.
Yes, I know I'm the one who gave you the bucket, but you're spending too much time with it. Don't you want another story involving the Adventure Line?
이제 또
We could make the Adventure Line go
뚠뚠뚠
somewhere new.
하면서
Yes,
그래,
yes.
양동이와 함께라면
Whee! Look at that wacky line. Who knows where it'll go off to next? Oh, and it played some silly music as well.
넓은 공간 많은 상자. 여기잖아.
Now this is what the Stanley Parable is all about. Don't you remember all those great jokes from the original dialogue?
딴따라란
Stanley's addicted to
딴.
drugs and
여기까지 똑같네.
Yes, it's as classic now as it was back then. Let's do it for the fans, Stanley. Let's give them more content exactly like this. But if we want to do that, you're going to have to give something. Don't you get it, Stanley? We need to get rid of the bucket. That's why I'm very proud to introduce a brand new character.
없애면 어떻게 되지?
This is the Bucket Destroyer. I think it'll make a wonderful new addition to the rich lore of the Stanley Parable. True,
이번에는
it also
양동이
was
한번
not in the
넣어보자.
original game, but it's such a well-fleshed-out character with so much personality that to me it already feels as though it's been part of the cast all along. Don't you agree?
Don't you agree?
Can you guess what the Bucket Destroyer does?
양동아
Surely you don't need me
행복했어.
to spell it out for
잘했어. 난 이만
Go ahead now,
갈게.
Stanley. Say goodbye to the bucket, and then pop it into the machine when you're ready.
양동이 쳐다만 보고 안 넣어지는데?
Now listen to me. It's crucial that you give it the bucket. I don't know what the bucket destroyer
아니,
will do if
양동이가
it
안
can't
들어가요.
destroy your bucket. Destroying buckets is all it knows.
어?
That is its singular personality trait. Sure, I can hear you saying, how does a character with only one personality trait deserve to join the pantheon of beloved
들어가지는데?
Stanley Parable characters? Well, you see, if you were to really explore the Bucket Destroyer, you would see that its desire to
아,
crush
아까
buckets
그렇게
is
반항 안
so
했어도
densely loaded with complexity and
어차피 안
nuance that
들어가는
it's really
거였네.
like 10 personality traits. What other object in this game can you even say
우리
that
양동이가
about?
싫어해서 못 넣는 거니?
Certainly not. I wonder what sort
이게
of
애초에
Bucket
안
Destroyer
들어가는
merchandise
거였어.
the fans will be clamoring for after this. Okay, the Bucket Destroyer is getting very upset now. You'll have to hurry and feed it. We can't get back to the classic Stanley Parable characters like the Adventure Line or the Bucket Destroyer until you crush that damn bucket. Quickly now.
안
The fans are
들어가.
waiting. Do it, the fans,
야,
Stanley.
아까랑
Give the
똑같잖아.
fans what they want. Hurry and...
펑. 과연?
The Bucket Destroyer, my prized creation. You had so much potential. We were going to do such marvelous things with you, tell such spellbinding stories about you. All of it squandered now. Goodbye, new friend. For the moment in time that you were here, you were magnificent.
아. 뭐야?
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room.
The good old bucket. Just Stanley and the bucket. Off on another thrilling adventure together.
아니 딱히 이게
Stanley
분기점이
clutched the
없는 것
bucket tightly
같은데?
to his chest and entered the door on his left.
중요한 사람을 위한 사적인 장소.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office.
사장의 화장실.
Okay, I'm going back to the name of these little Stanley figurines. And now I'm torn between Stanley
이것이구만.
and Figlers. What do you think, Stanley?
사적인 장소.
What name better encapsulates the intrinsic sense of happiness that you get from seeing a small number in the corner of your screen go up by 1? Let me sit on it. I'm sure it will come to me.
극한의 화장실. 돈은 훔치라고 있는 거래. 맞아?
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed, but Stanley guessed the correct code by
아,
sheer
바로
luck.
돈은?
Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical
그
explanation.
다음이 빨강과 파랑이 모두 있는 곳이라고 했죠? 오른쪽으로 갔을 때도 하나 정도 찾을 수 있을 것 같은데 느낌이.
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility. Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley and the bucket would both meet a violent death.
여기 아무리 봐도 어차피 그냥 마지막에 한 번 살려주고 다시 죽일 것 같아. 예전에도 그랬었거든. 그렇다면 왼쪽으로.
But of course, Stanley and the bucket thought better of it and realized they simply had too much to
이번에는
live for.
정신지배를 눌러봐야 되나?
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley and the bucket both wondered to
쌍둥이가
themselves.
지켜주지 않을까? 정신지배를 당해도?
The monitors jumped to life, and Stanley nearly
해고됨.
dropped the bucket in shock.
해고됨.
Everyone in the office was being videotaped.
와, 이런 회사에서
monitored
해고될
like
정도면은
guinea pigs.
스탠리보다 더한 건데.
Bucket had never seen anything like this, and it very nearly burst into tears as Stanley cradled it gently, reassuring it that everything would be fine.
스탠리 계속 쌍둥이
Was the bucket under the
안심시켜주는 중.
mind control facility's influence as well? Had the bucket been told to do things it didn't wish to do? What kinds of things does a bucket want to do or not want to do in the first place? These questions raced furiously in Stanley's feeble mind. No!
빨강과
He screamed into the
파랑이
bucket.
모두?
He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control. Never! He squeezed the bucket tighter. His one friend in the entire world. At this point, he could trust no one except for the bucket.
용?
But here was the proof. The heart of the operation.
빨강과
Controls
파랑 모두.
labeled with emotions. Happy or sad or content. Walking, eating, working, all of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he and the bucket
빨강과
would dismantle
파랑.
the controls for good. Two best friends, Stanley and the bucket, up against the world. They high-fived in a really cool way, and the bucket made a sassy comment about taking down the system.
이 문을 열 수 있을 것 같은데. 핑크? 이게 아닌가? 오호호. 한 군데쯤 있을 것 같은데. 우선은 가봅시다. 이번에는 ON을 눌러보는 걸로.
When at last they came to the
나레이션도
source of the
들어보자.
room's power, Stanley and the bucket knew it was their obligation to put an end to this horrible place and to everything it stood for. But at the last second, the bucket jumped in and pressed the button to turn on the controls. Stanley gasped in horror. Had this been the bucket's plan all along? To take over the machine and claim the power for itself?
양동이
How could the bucket
흑막설?
have betrayed him like this? Stanley was prepared to throw the bucket away in disgust when suddenly an image appeared upon the enormous screen. Birds.
뭐야?
Silly, silly birds. The control buttons became active again.
우와!
Stanley flipped through one video of silly birds after another.
우와, 이
and
신기하게
then it dawned on
생겼어요.
him. This wasn't a mind control facility at all. It was a facility for monitoring and surveilling silly birds all over the world.
뭐야,
The mind
귀여워.
controls were only a facade to disguise its true intentions. Had the bucket known this all along?
나 이거 입인 줄
Stanley
알았는데
marveled at the
아니었네?
metal genius in his hands. The one who had
불이,
pointed him towards this
불이로 입
incredible
뻐끔뻐끔하고 있는 줄?
Stanley and the bucket never found freedom because they spent the rest of their lives here in this place, flipping through live streams of the silliest birds imaginable. Of all the
뭐야?
possible paths his life could have taken, this one was surely the best.
귀여워.
And Stanley was happy.
뭔데? 뭐야?
I can't wait to tell this story to my co-workers, Stanley thought. How amusing they'll find it. Oh, won't we all just laugh and laugh at the time I thought everyone had gone missing. Where are we
부대사령님
going today? The
감사합니다.
bucket asked. Stanley just smiled. Anywhere they went together would be perfect. Stanley pressed the bucket upon
안 돼.
every little thing in the office. Nothing responded to the bucket's touch, but it did little to discourage Stanley's
부대사령님 다시
belief
한번
in the
고맙습니다.
magic of the bucket.
호호.
Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his
그러면?
chest and entered the door on his left.
완전 반대도 아까 해봤음.
Oh, Stanley, can you feel it? The broom closet. It
Can you
wants the
feel it?
bucket. You can feel that, can't you? The aura of jealousy? It's as clear as day. This broom closet believes it deserves the bucket. Coming to a staircase,
안
Stanley and the
내려가지는데?
bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have broken down into an emotional dumpster fire if not for the soothing presence of the bucket. Even now, in his darkest of hours, did the bucket's warmth and guiding light pierce the dark clouds of confusion and chaos. It would be with him always. The bucket.
방금
And
클릭할
he
수 있는
knew
거 못 봤었는데.
the two of them were inseparable. At this point, Stanley was so absorbed in the tender spiritual
요거
connection he
때문인가
shared
봐.
with the bucket that he didn't notice the keypad behind the boss's desk. Nor in his bliss of simply being near the bucket did he have any notion that the PIN number for the keypad was 2845.
다시 안 열어줌?
Stanley just sat around twiddling his thumbs. Trying to input anything on the device was useless, since he could never possibly know that the combination was 2845.
2845. 응?
284. But Stanley guessed
한
the
번 또
correct
알려줘.
code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
여기 있는 거 가는 건 다 해봤는데.
Stanley knew the office layout like the back of his hand. It was only a matter of time before he found the others, wherever they were.
냠.
A good bucket, a strong bucket, a humble bucket, a committed bucket,
Humble
a bucket of
bucket.
culture and distinction. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door
자,
on his
이번에
left.
들어갈랑 말랑 해봅시다.
Coming to
여기
a
바로
staircase,
위지?
Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office.
상자가 뭐야? 다시 열렸는데? 올라가면 뭐고 내려가면 뭘까요? 뭔가 부금 나와요. 뭐야? 아까 거기잖아. 뭐야? 뭐가 없나 본데? 뭐라?
Stepping.
오. 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 약 올리기. 오. 되돌아가는 게 되네요. 열렸다. 떠나는 중. 탈출 푸드구요. (760층) 755층. 여기가 아까 거긴가? 그 피규어 얻을 수 있다던데? 뭐야, 저 430이 그대로인데? 이 그대로인데? (432) (760) 탈출 코드. 하요, 용용님 감사합니다. 안녕하세요. 뭐야? 진짜 탈출 포드임? 아? 양동이 내보내는 거야? 양동아, 양동아, 행복해야 돼. 나 대신 행복해야 돼. 잘 가. 행복해야 해. 안녕. 안녕. 근데요, 우리 쌍둥이가 제일 소중하다고요.
What could it mean?
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
쌍둥이 이제 없어. 쌍둥이 탈출시켜서. 헐.
When Stanley came to a set of 2
저희?
open doors, he entered the door on his left.
여기까지 합시다. 쌍둥이가 없어졌네요. 재밌었습니다. 뭐 전 찾는 건 제 스타일이 아니고 여기까지 재밌었습니다.